Hello, and welcome to the Space King podcast, where all things converge, from the innermost depths of the mind to the outer reaches of the cosmos. This is your reality.
Our co-host Jericho. Jericho, how are you doing tonight, my friend?
I'm doing good. How are you doing tonight, David?
I'm excellent, man. I'm excited about that. I love time travel.
Oh, I think we all would love time travel if we could figure out its mysteries, and that's exactly why we're here tonight, is figure out the mysteries of time travel. Please don't report us to the FBI or the CIA or the government.
Well, I tried to buy a time machine on eBay, but for some reason it never showed up.
Oh, yeah?
It got stopped in the mail or I got ripped off. I'm not sure what happened.
Gotcha. I wonder what happened there.
So I'm starting out tonight with just some general talk about time travel, basically pop culture, that type of thing, that's going on. All the different things you hear about, photographs that people see that they claim is time travel, and movie clips from the past where they say people time travel and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of them out there. So starting out with this one, there's a photograph of this man. He's on a beach, and this is in the 30s. And there's a whole bunch of people on the beach, and they're all enjoying themselves. And he's standing, and he's kind of in the center of the photo. And he has his hands up towards his chest, and he's kind of looking down. So everyone claims that he's holding a cell phone. And if you look at the way his hands are and the way he's looking down, it does look like he could possibly be holding a cell phone. But you can't really tell what he's holding.
You can't just by that posture, because someone could have a small note in their hands of paper and be looking down at it too like that.
Exactly. My theory for this particular one, what I think is going on there is that because of the time period, the way he's standing, he's on a beach, I think he's rolling a cigarette.
That's a good possibility too.
He would be holding it close to his chest like that because it's usually windy on a beach. And if you've ever tried to roll a cigarette in the wind, yeah, you kind of tuck it in towards your chest a little bit. But people that, people that really are the time travel believers really think that one could be a man holding a cell phone. There's a lot of cell phone ones for some reason too. For some reason there seems to be a lot of things that have to do with cell phones. There's another one. Okay. So there's another one with cell phone, and this one takes place in a film from 1928 with Charlie Chaplin. The movie was called The Circus. And in this particular movie, there's a scene, and there's a woman walking down the street, and she has her hand up against the side. Looks like she's holding a cell phone. And when she turns a little bit in the movie, it looks like she's actually speaking. Now, a lot of people are skeptics, claim that it's a type of hearing aid that she's holding. And they show a hearing aid from that time period that, could possibly what it could be. And okay, it could be a hearing aid, but what I find interesting about this particular film and the footage is that at one point you see her turn a little bit and she's moving her lips like she's speaking to someone. And there's no one around her. So if it was a hearing aid, why would she be speaking? So that's an interesting one. And that one was caught, like I said, on film in Charlie Chaplin's film, The Circus from 1928. And that one I'm not so sure about. It's possible that could be a time traveler, that went back, wanted to see the movie being made.
What was the year again?
1928, and the movie is Charlie Chaplin's movie, The Circus. And there's a scene where the woman is walking on the street. And there's another cell phone one, another thing, and this one's from 1938. And there are a group of women, and they're walking together. There's 4 women in a row, and they're walking. There's a crowd around them, some people in front of them, some people behind them.
What I don't understand is if it was cell phones back during these time frames, was there even cell phone towers? Like, could they even be using a cell phone, or would it just be like it was charged and they were looking at the time or something?
Oh,
You know what I mean?
yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Now, if they're a time traveler, do you think that they might have some sort of a device that would allow them to communicate with people in this time? I don't know.
Yeah.
From where they came from, it's hard to say.
If it's a standard cell phone, I would say no.
Yeah. So I don't know. These are all the things the skeptics also bring up. But what's interesting about the 1938 one is with the group of women, the woman is walking, she has a device up against her face, and it looks like a cell phone from now, like a flat, cell phone. It's not like a brick or anything like that. And you see it fairly clearly in the photograph. And people that believe, the time travel people believe that this is proof that, it's a time traveler. This woman has a cell phone.
You know what else it could be proof of? It could be proof of we've had these technologies for a long time and we just started rolling them out.
Well, exactly. And that's where the next part of this story comes. There's a woman that claims that the woman in the film is her grandmother, and that her grandmother was 17 years old and that working at the DuPont factory. And that's where they're walking out from, is the DuPont factory. And she asked her grandmother about this film. And her grandmother said that she worked in a department at the DuPont factory that was dealing with wireless technology, and that several of the women that worked there, like 10 of them, were given experimental wireless phones to test. Now, that story sounds good, but my problem with that is that it's the size of the phone that she's holding in her hand. Because in 1980s, when my stepfather got his first cellular phone, it was the size of a shoebox, and he had to hang it over his shoulder like a purse.
The theory though behind that stuff, or at least when it comes to advanced technologies, way before, is that all these advanced technologies we've had for like 100 years, we just don't start rolling them out to the public. When we roll out really crappy models in the beginning to make it look like we're progressing, so we don't just have it all of a sudden to raise questions. And that's the theory I've heard about a lot of that stuff is, so let's say that lady did have like a modern day cell phone, but back then we wouldn't be finding out about it until now, because we would have rolled out all the prior versions that they went through that were now like 150 years behind on for the public to have.
Yeah, that's one of the theories.
Yep. So is it time, is it time travel, or is it just super delayed technologies that we're just now receiving?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I mean, that one I kind of lean to. It could be a time traveler. It's possible. The story also, but my problem with the story is the technology would be too advanced for the time. And like you said, well, perhaps they didn't roll that particular version out. They held it back,
Yeah, I don't know.
I remember the first cell phone my stepfather had, and that thing was the size of a shoebox. And it was like a purse hanging off you, and it had a cord attached to the base unit. It was crazy. It was cool as hell, though. You were like, hey, look at me. I'm walking down the street talking on a phone.
What I'm saying, too, that fits into the theory I was saying, is that phone that he had, your father had, perhaps that was a phone that they had in the 1800s, and then and they just started releasing that to the public as the newest, greatest thing when it's way behind in time.
Yeah. So cell phones seem to be a big theme in the time traveling theory of conspiracies with people. There seems to be a lot of those.
I'm not saying it's not time travel. I'm just saying it could just be...
Well, no, it could be lots of things. But, I get the people that say it's time travel, and some of it, I think it's possible. I think the one that I like is the one from the Charlie Chaplin. When you see the footage of the film, it's kind of convincing.
Gotcha.
Because she's speaking and stuff. And that reminds me also to let everyone know that if they're interested in seeing any of the stuff we're talking about, that they can click on the Discord link and come into our Discord, and we put our stuff into our news feed for you to take a look at. And if you'd like to participate in the show tonight, you can come in and go into the podcast waiting room, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on time travel.
On top of that, message us on Twitch so we're aware you're in the Discord, because when we're streaming, everything in Discord is quiet. Well, at least on my end. So the other one that I have
Also, that I thought was real interesting is the time traveling celebrities. I'm sure a lot of people have heard about these,
Yeah.
which involve John Travolta and Nicolas Cage.
Yeah. Real quick.
And there's
Real quick, on the other thing you were saying, there's a famous picture. I can't remember if it's got a president or some political figure, I think, coming off a plane, and then someone in the crowd is wearing clothing that looks like it's from this era and not then, or something like that, or a newer era.
Yeah.
You know
yeah,
what picture I'm talking about?
Yeah. The picture, that one, the guy is wearing, they claim that the sunglasses aren't the right period. His hair is too long. The shirt he has on is like looks like a t-shirt with like a screen paint or whatever decal that we wouldn't have and all that. I totally disagree with that one.
I'm just telling you, that's
Completely.
one I heard of. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't buy that one at all because those sunglasses did exist in that time period. That those clothing did exist. He's basically what they would have called a beatnik at that time period.
Gotcha.
And that one, to me, doesn't hold water. But I know which one you're talking.
He just didn't conform to the standards of dressing back then.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
that one I'm not too sure about. Now the Nicolas Cage and the John Travolta one, there's been pictures
seen
that
those
surfaced.
pictures,
And yeah, some people say that those pictures were doctored to make it look like them. The people that sold the pictures say nope, they're genuine photographs I found. I mean, it could be time travel. It could be a doppelganger.
Wow.
They say everybody has a twin. People that look like them.
There's this picture. I'll tell you this. My mother, she has a friend that she works with, and I went over to that friend's house the one time, and she had a picture of her husband when he was in the military.
Mhm.
And I took a look at the photo. I saw it. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I looked away, and then my brain processed, wait a second, who's that in that photo? And I looked back at it again, like, wait a second. I take a double take. In that photo, I'm not joking, at that moment in his life, in that photo, he looked like exactly the way I did when I was in high school. Like, I looked, like, literally, it looked like a picture of me in a uniform. I'm like, wait a second, what is this?
That's funny. I have a picture like that of my dad.
Yeah, well, I'm not related to this person at all.
Oh, okay.
It's-
I have a
it's-
picture of my dad like that. People
yeah.
are like, wait, is that you? I'm like, no, that's my dad.
Well, that's the thing, is I'm not related to this person at all. It was my mom's friend's husband.
Yeah.
No
So,
blood
are you a time
relation in
traveler
any way.
that you don't know about.
Well, no, that guy's alive still.
Well, that doesn't mean that you still couldn't have
No, I guess that's true.
time traveled and split.
Well, maybe he would have had to do a lot to change his appearance, because only at that one photo did he look like me. He doesn't look anything like me now.
Yeah.
But in that one photo, I had to. My mom even said when she first saw it, she had to look at it a couple times and be like, "Who is this?"
Well, that's the thing. It's like those photos could very well be real with of John Travolta and Nicolas Cage. The thing is that it doesn't necessarily mean it's them. It just could be the photographs that were taken and the way the person
Looked
just
at that
happened to be
moment.
sitting in the light.
Yeah.
It just looked like them. But it's possible that and the two of the interesting thing is that they starred in a movie together. Supposedly they're friends.
Yeah.
So maybe they have access to a time machine. Who knows? It could be. The other one, now this one I think is this one I believe. I 100% believe that this is true. And this is the carving of an astronaut on a church.
Oh,
and
yeah.
there's this church it was built like from 1600 to the 1800s, and there's a carving on this church. And the carving on it is of an astronaut. And there's no mistaking what it is.
Mhm.
I mean, it is an astronaut. It's a small carve. It's not a real big carving, but it's carved into the rest of the reliefs that are on the pillar of this church, and is absolutely 100% is an astronaut. You cannot look at this picture and claim it to be anything else. And so this is considered. People say that this proves that either the person had contact with a time traveler, or the person that did the carving was the time traveler, and that they put it in the church in this stone carving because they knew it would last as proof of time travel, which I believe that one. That one I absolutely believe. There's no doubt about it. If you haven't seen the picture, it's pretty.
Here's the question for you: is it a time traveler that they made a carving of, or is it someone that saw into the future making a carving?
Well, that's also one of the things that's possible that they discussed, that maybe somebody saw into the future. It's possible that they time traveled through their mind.
Yeah.
People can time travel through their mind. That is the basis of a very popular movie from the 80s that's called Somewhere in Time, where the guy uses his mind to go back in time to meet this woman who he saw a picture of, who he falls in love with through the photograph. And he uses his mind to travel back in time and meet her. And he does. It's a really good movie, and I'd recommend it to anybody who is interested in time travel and romantic films. It seems like a weird combo, but it works.
Well, there's plenty of love movies with time travel, like the one with the house on the lake or whatever. They put the letter in the mailbox to each other.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I didn't see that movie.
I haven't seen it either, but I've seen bits and pieces of it here and there, so I know enough to know that's a time traveling kind of sort of thing too.
Yeah.
And they try to meet up at points where their timelines intersect.
Yeah, that's right. They do. Yeah, I gotta see that one. I haven't seen that. That's who's in that? Keanu Reeves and
Sandra Bullock,
right?
Yep.
Yeah,
he's one. I have to say, I think he's my favorite actor. I'm gonna get all sorts of hate, but yeah, he's my favorite actor.
He's not a terrible actor, but
he does. In some of his, well, that's the thing. He started off as one of those, like, he's Bill and Ted.
Yeah,
that was the starting point. But,
he was a time traveler in Bill and Ted. I totally forgot about. Wow, I totally forgot about that movie.
He's been in several time travel movies
for time travel. So there's another one that I have here. It's about this guy, the time traveling investor. And this guy claimed to be from the year 2256. And he traveled back into the time. And what happened is he got caught they accused him of insider trading, because he took $800 and within 2 weeks made $350 million in the stock market.
Wow.
And they claim the only way that he possibly could have done this is with insider trading. They arrested him. And, they're doing the whole interview with him, and where'd you get the information, all that. And he claimed, I didn't get it from anyone here. I'm a time traveler from the year 2256, and so that's how I was able to know what to do. So of course they just think the guy's crazy and give him his court date.
2256.
Yeah, 2256.
Wow, that's way ahead.
Yeah. So they give him his appointment to appear in court, and he doesn't show up, and he completely
disappears.
No one knows where this guy went. Maybe he was from the future and he went back.
Because at that point,
escape prosecution.
Is it still in his name at that point? Because they can't take it from him, or how's that work?
What do you mean?
All the money
they still
he had
prosecute
made.
him? Oh yeah. Well, yeah, because they thought it was insider trading. So yeah, they could take the money from him. Yeah, they took the money because they accused him of insider trading. Now, I'm not sure if he had made the money and it was in a bank, since he's only under investigation and being prosecuted, since he hadn't been found guilty yet. There was probably a hold on the money, but it wouldn't have been completely confiscated. It would have been evidence. So if he traveled, I don't see how he could have gotten the money,
unless it wasn't about the money. It was about the investments that he made with the money for the specific companies.
Yeah,
that's how it could have.
He could have went back to the future, and he could have still had a lot of money. Who knows?
Yeah, because he might have had a business invested in it, and then he has it in that business in the future potentially, or something. That's interesting.
Yeah, and it's that happened in 2014. The guy's name was Andrew Carlson. And so yeah, that one. I mean, and of course, that's what everyone dreams about. When it comes to time travel, is can you go back and you invest in
I wouldn't be. If I could time travel, I'd be witnessing things. I don't think I would
Yeah.
be. I wouldn't.
Yeah, but you wouldn't,
No.
go back and bet on some sports things
Nope.
that you knew the outcome just to get some money?
Nope.
No, I would. I mean,
have no
would,
desire
I would
to do that.
also go back to do. I'd also go back and obviously I'd want to see certain aspects of history. But I mean, if I could go back in time and invest in Google, yeah, I would.
See, I am much more interested in finding out the secrets of the universe than I am making myself some money through time travel. So I'd rather find out the secrets of the universe through time travel. Because if you know the secrets of
Well-
the universe, you can do anything.
Well, if you find out the secrets of the universe, then the money may not be necessary. But I would also hedge my bets to have the money so that when if I do come back, I could do a lot of good with the money too.
That's true.
Here,
That's true.
this time.
Okay, let me put it this way. It wouldn't be my first priority.
Yeah. I mean, I would go back and see, great events within history. I mean, I'd go back and see how did they build the pyramids. I mean, that would be great to find out how exactly how the pyramids were built, because there's so much stuff.
I want to go back to
back.
ancient Sumeria and see what happened during those times.
Did the Anunnaki? Did they
All of
actually
that stuff.
come
All
here?
of it. Yeah. I want to go back.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
see
Who made
that.
the Nazca lines and all that too?
Yep.
So
why
the,
is there Black Hawks and Egyptian? Why is there Black Hawk helicopters and Egyptian hieroglyphs?
Exactly. Well, that supposedly is proof of time travel. Also, they claim that has to do with time travel.
And they
there's
prove
also
that's an
the
authentic.
light bulb.
Good.
There's also the light bulb that's on that one relief that shows which looks like a giant light bulb that they had. And what's interesting about that is, of course, mainstream archaeology says that no, they didn't have it. They used torches and stuff. But when they go into these tombs, there's no evidence of torches have been being used in there, of any sort of soot or ash from that. So it's possible that they did have that technology because of the Baghdad battery and that relief on the wall.
Yep. Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff because like the whole hieroglyph of the Black Hawk helicopter. They've proven that that's a legitimate hieroglyph.
Mm-hmm.
They can't explain why there's a drawing of a helicopter.
Yeah. Now, either that could be evidence of time travel. It could
Or
be
seeing
someone that
into the
had seen
future.
into the future.
Yep.
So the other, moving on here to the next thing that I have is there's two incidences involving Marilyn Monroe.
I've heard about
one-
her being in time travel stuff. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, the one is her. I think she's like in a bathroom, and there's a woman standing behind her, and this woman's holding a device up, and it looks like a cell phone, and it looks like the way you hold it when you're taking a photograph. It's really hard to tell that it's not a cell phone. I've looked at the photo. I'm not sure what it is. It definitely could be a cell phone, and the theory is that this woman traveled back in time and took her phone with her in order to take a picture of Marilyn Monroe.
That would be legit. I would take a camera. I would. You know what I'm saying? Like, go back. If I went back in time, I would definitely take a camera, take pictures of stuff, and only show certain people. Like, hey, look at this, guys! Woo!
So that's the one with her. Then the other one is she's laying in bed and she's holding a device in her hand. She's laying on her side. She's holding the device in front of her and she's staring at the device. And she looks like she's really staring at it and concentrating. You know how people get that look on their face when they look at a cell phone.
or looking at something.
Yeah. And the
I
way
know
she's
that look all
holding
too
it and
well.
everything. And some people claim, well, it's a pack of cigarettes. But I'm like, why would she be staring at a pack of cigarettes that closely?
They
Like,
didn't have
that-
the ingredients listed back then.
Yeah, I don't know what she would be looking at. Others claim it could be a compact, and she's looking at herself in the mirror, which
That's a good
makes
possibility.
some sense. that could be it. The other possibility is that it could be the cell phone. Now, my curiosity with this, and I wasn't able to find any information, is the picture with the woman in the bathroom and the picture of Marilyn Monroe in the bed. Which one was taken first? Or is it or does it not matter which one was taken first, but it's Marilyn looking at the device when the woman showed it to her?
Yeah.
And she's sitting there completely mesmerized by this thing, like, oh my God, this is amazing. And she's staring at it. And then the other one is the woman actually taking the photograph of Marilyn with it. So, it depends when those photos were taken, how far apart were they taken? If they were taken within like the same year or stuff like that, that information can be found out. That would be interesting to know.
I mean, if that stuff is real, I'm sure it's buried.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible.
People will go out of their way to bury that stuff if it's true.
Yeah.
I have a theory about time anyway, so I'm sure that stuff is more than possible, in my opinion, based off of my theory of how time works. But
so my other, let's see, I got this other one here too. This is called the Boy at Gettysburg Address.
Okay.
And this is about this gentleman. His name was what the heck was his name? His name was Andrew Basiago, and he claims that he was involved in a government time travel program called Project Pegasus.
That sounds familiar for some reason.
Yeah, Project Pegasus is a big time travel experiment and teleportation program that the government was involved in. It's a little. I'm not going to get into all the aspects of that right now. That's for another night. But there is a photograph of a boy at the Gettysburg Address, and he claims that picture is of him, and that the government had sent him back to that time to witness it, and that they also sent him to other times in history.
A little boy is a lot more. Stays off the radar a lot more than an adult would.
Yeah. And what's interesting is he doesn't have any shoes on in the picture, and he claims, well, he lost his shoes while they're traveling through time, which is like, oh, okay, you lost your shoes. I don't know, okay, whatever. But that one's kind of cool. I mean, the guy, when you hear his whole story and the whole thing, and we're definitely we'll have to do an evening on Project Pegasus because that's a really cool story.
Okay.
Interesting. And then my last one here of things is
you're just doing all three of them at once in a row instead of going back and forth?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The other one is, well, no, these are all one thing.
Okay.
This is all my kind of like pop culture.
Gotcha. Okay, I understand.
The last one here, though, that I have of these type of things is the Philadelphia experiment, which took place where they were trying to make a ship invisible to radar during World War II, and supposedly it got teleported. One theory is that it was teleported in time to another time, another year, and the other is that it was just teleported to another area in time. Okay. But supposedly two of the soldiers that were on board, the two of the sailors, they claim to had been teleported, time traveled into the year 1984, and they actually spent time in 1984 and then went back to the ship when it reappeared in Philadelphia.
Oh wow.
And there's a movie about that too that they made. It's not the best movie in the world, but if you want to see the movie, it was good. But the Philadelphia experiment itself is a really interesting. Supposedly Nikola Tesla, Einstein were involved in it. That's another one for another evening also.
Doesn't Einstein say something about Nikola Tesla being a truly smart man?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Like, doesn't he say that Tesla's smarter than him or something?
I don't know. I don't know that he ever said. I don't know.
I'd have to look into that because
Nikola Tesla was a genius.
Yeah, and
he dabbled in time travel. All sorts of things, Well, I mean, he pretty much invented our modern world.
Pretty much, and people are like, "Oh, that's not true." Well, it is. Like the entire understanding of electrical energy comes from him. pretty much.
Mhm.
Other people
Yeah.
used it, but he's the one that understood it more than everybody, as far as I can tell.
Yeah. So that's my stuff that I had for the start off the night with and everything. So
Okay.
what do you got?
All right. Well, excuse me. Oh, sorry about that. I didn't drink any coffee. I don't like coffee. Anyways, so I'll get more into I'll get into my theory of time travel and how it works, and I'll describe it how I do to everyone else when I talk about it. It's almost like the moment that we're living in, the physical time is linear, as in forward and back, but it's almost as if you can use means outside of the physical to go back and forth around. You know what I'm saying? So imagine everybody's seen those really big dictionaries, right? The big hardcover dictionaries, super thick, like 800 pages.
Yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
I don't be laughing. I'm 2 years old. Never mind, I'm a 5-year-old. When you said everybody's seen those big dictionaries.
Okay, I got you.
I
Well, you know what?
apologize.
Fine. Those big, thick encyclopedias. Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, the big, thick encyclopedias, not dictionaries. So imagine a big book with all those pages. Now imagine you have a knife in your hand. So the book represents time, and the tip of the knife, the sharp tip of the knife, represents you. So you take the big, thick book, and you take the knife, and you stab it in through the book, through the cover. Wherever that tip of the knife is at that moment where you are holding the knife in. So let's say you're on page 200, or you're page on 400, or you go back and forth between different pages. You can go up and down the pages. You can go vertically through the numbers of the pages. That tip of the knife is you at that point in the given time in that book.
Okay.
So the book is time itself, and the knife is you. And my theory on that is you can control the knife and go back and forth in between all those different pages.
Okay.
So it's not a line, it's a stack. It's like time is stacked on itself rather than stretched out on a line.
Yeah.
It's not a
Yeah,
timeline,
well,
it's a stack.
Yeah, well, veiling the theory right now of space-time, which is there's the 3 dimensions which we live in, and then the 4th dimension is time travel, and that time is not, it's not a linear string. It's like you just said. It's like would be like a book or like a box, and you can travel within all those different areas and outside of this, which is the 4th dimension.
But we experience it. It's like I think the physical world, to a certain degree, experiences things in a linear line, but we're capable of going outside of that line. So it's like, okay, no, I'm going to rephrase this. I just thought of a better way to put it. So our timeline that we're currently in, the physical world timeline, is page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, and just continues down through the pages. But you have the ability to flip to whatever page you want to, if you can figure out how to do it. So we experience it one page at a time, but we can go back to the beginning or the end, or
Yeah. Okay. Well, because of our physical limitations of being in this form as a human, it makes it, it's difficult for us to travel in time. But once we're no longer in this form and we die, our energy, our soul, allows us to travel in time any way we want in any dimension. And the idea of inventing a time machine is only necessary because of the physical form that we are right now.
Gotcha.
Without the physical form, if we're just the energy that we, as we exist, then you're outside of this dimension, time, and space, and you can travel anywhere you want to. So once you die, and you want to call it your spirit,
your
energy,
soul.
your soul, whatever you want to call it, it's free to travel into any dimension, universe, timeline, anything you want. It's only right now in this physical form that we've chosen to live in that keeps us the use of having a time machine, that we need a time machine. But yes, I understand what you're saying, that we can travel on it the way you're saying. But that's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah, it's like that book has a set series of events that still happen in that order regardless, but you can go back and view the other times or temporarily be there in the other pages is what I think, because I've got a whole bunch of other stuff that plays into my theory of that, which has nothing to do with time travel. But
now, what is your thoughts on the grandfather paradox?
like if you go back and kill your grandfather, you won't be born?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know why you would be able to. Okay, if you could go back and kill your grandpa and you were successful at it, would you ever actually do it if you were in the same timeline? In the way they think time works that way? Because if you killed your grandpa, then you wouldn't be born, so could you have killed him to begin with?
Yeah, well, that's the paradox, exactly.
Yeah, I know, and I'm not. I think if it's possible, you're not doing it in your same timeline. It's like you've diverted it somehow, or you've gone down a different path if you were able to do it.
Yeah, that's the multi-dimensional theory. If you go back and kill your grandfather, you're starting a new timeline for yourself, where your grandfather
like you came into that
doesn't exist from
timeline
that period.
At that point, that's where you come into it. But real quick in the chat, DeGroth says psychic equals soul and spirit.
Okay, I see. How you doing? Thanks for joining us tonight.
You
yeah.
Good.
I think if you go back in time, okay, to keep your grandparents from meeting, so you won't be born. All you're doing is you're starting a new timeline from that period where you keep them from meeting. Like they still exist in the timeline you left. So from where like you start in the future, you go back. They still exist in the time that you left from, because you're creating a new offshoot.
So basically, it's like you left one timeline and went into another. They still they were still together in your timeline, but you diverted to a different one.
Yes, exactly. When you go back, you're basically going back to a different dimension or different universe, different time. And I kind of think everyone has their own timeline. And so you can go back in your timeline, you're just starting it, and then you're starting a new one for yourself.
So here's the question then. How often do we do that? Do we do that while we're sleeping? Do we do it subconsciously? Do we divert our timelines all the time, and that's what our reality is?
It's possible, and I've thought about that, yeah.
And we just don't realize it?
Sure. Our perceptions of our reality are what we make it. So, sure, you could very easily change something and it not be, for you, it's normal. It's what it's supposed to be, or what you made it to be, I guess.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about going back to the other thing is, people say, well, I go back in time and, kill Hitler as a baby and then put a different baby in the place.
Well, here's the thing.
But what happens if the baby you replaced
person.
it with? Yeah, but what happened is if the baby that you replaced it with was actually Hitler? What if the baby you went back to kill and thought was Hitler wasn't really Hitler? It's because you went back and killed the baby and put a different one in its place. And
it became Hitler.
Put in its place was the one that grew up to be Hitler.
Oh.
That's what happens when you screw around with time.
Well, you know what else too is it doesn't matter what Hitler did as an adult. Are you willing to condemn a child that hasn't done those things yet?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? That child is completely innocent.
Oh, doesn't in the chat, DeGrasse says, doesn't everyone's timeline start at the beginning of time? No, it doesn't. And that's because you're thinking about this physical timeline of us existing in this area right now in our physical being. But once you die and you leave this body, then time and space no longer exist in that form. So everyone could begin at a different time. It depends on when you came into existence.
What I was thinking when he said that was, in the beginning of time when everything was created, isn't that where we all have our initial start? Is where the beginning of everything started. That would be my thought on that.
No, because I don't think that
You don't
time
think-
began. I think there was, yeah. Well,
You know what I'm
if
talking
you
about, like
look at the
everything
Big
came
Bang
into existence.
Theory,
Yeah.
if you look into the Big Bang, yeah, if you look at Big Bang Theory, or if God created us, or however you want to say it all began at the time, yes, in this dimension and universe, but you can exist with outside of this dimension and universe, so you may have existed before then. You've chose, as we've talked about before, this is a form that we've chosen to take as an experience right now for
Yeah.
our energy and our soul to experience as a human. But when we die, we can go on and experience other things in other forms and other beings, other dimensions and existence. It's just we've chosen this one right now.
No, I get that. My thought on it is that all existence and all realms or dimensions and all that stuff came into existence at some point.
I think that it always existed. It didn't all start
It's kind of like, to me, what I believe is kind of like a creator story / Big Bang Theory, where God and all of existence and time came into existence all at the same moment. So at that moment in which it came in, it was already before and after, because time itself, you see what I'm saying? Like that point in time, at that point of creation, when everything came into existence, boom, at that moment, everything else was in existence too. So it's like at the point in which everything came into existence, after that was established, that let's say it was a thumbtack. Once that thumbtack was placed in the board, everything before and after happened all at the same time.
But what was there before that?
I think there was a nothingness. And I don't think it was true nothing. I just think there was something else.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's the other dimension or other.
Well, I still don't agree with that, but we'll have to disagree on that. But it's like, when I say nothing, it's like it was something that existed where no other dimension or anything had anything. So imagine a black mass, a black liquid, right? A black liquid.
Mm-hmm.
Where literally all it is a black liquid, and there is nothing else besides that black liquid. There's no time, there's no dimensions, that's it. It's just a puddle of blackness. And then something was born in that blackness, and then the thing that was born in that blackness can transcend into before and after.
Okay, I agree with you with that within this dimension, but
I think it supersedes all dimensions.
Perhaps what we perceive as this dimension was a offshoot of another timeline that already existed, and that's what made this timeline come into existence.
Well, I'm not referring to our timeline physically, so I don't know.
Well, I'm talking the whole aspect of another dimension existed, and something happened in that dimension which caused this dimension to come into existence. Same type of thing.
Maybe.
And then there very easily could have been there was nothing until something happened in that other dimension that caused it to take place. Who knows? Now I got a question. If you could go anywhere in time, and this is for everyone, where would you go?
Anywhere in time? I would go back to what I believe to be the first civilization that existed, and I would experience it again.
So what, the Sumerians, the Anunnaki?
No, I'm not talking about Earth. I'm talking about the first civilization period of all time and
all time. Okay, gotcha.
So
outside of our dimension that we exist in right now.
Well, yes and no. I think that, like I said, we disagree on how dimensions work, but the beginning of everything, the way I see it, the first civilization after that came into existence is what I would want to go experience. So, like, for example, when the whole, like, God came into existence and created everything, the first civilization that was made after God came into existence, like the first civilization of beings, is the one I would want to go experience.
Okay, so right after
the very first life, the very first civilization of life, right after everything came into existence.
Okay. So however long
ago that
from
was,
the
I
Big
don't
Bang
know.
to the thing. Yeah.
I have no
Okay.
idea, but that would be the first thing I would want to.
How would you get there if you don't know when it
It's time
is?
travel. You said outside of all time and everything, like go whenever, anywhere in time, or whatever. It's time travel. I just appeared there.
Well, it depends how you're traveling in time. Are you traveling in time from now in this physical form where you would need a machine to do it, or are you doing it in your spiritual, in your
True
energy form?
time
after
travel
this?
that requires nothing. I was
Exactly.
just
Okay.
going based off of you said if I could experience any point in time, what would it be? I didn't know we were picking forms of time travel. I was just saying in general.
Mm-hmm.
If I could time travel to any point in time, that's when I would go.
Okay. So with the if it what's his name? He has in there the 1.8 million years ago. Yes, if you subscribe to theory of
I think life existed before Earth.
well, it's talking about the known universe and I guess the Big Bang theory is what you're talking about there.
No, 1.8 million. That's not.
Yeah,
That's not.
No.
Yeah.
it wouldn't be enough.
Yeah. No, I don't mean the first.
I don't know.
being
I
on
honestly
Earth.
don't know where I would go. I mean, there's several places I would want to go. I don't know which would be my absolute. If I could only do one, I'm not sure what it would be. But I mean, I would want to go back and see things within
Well-
our history, like the pyramids. How did they build them?
Yeah. Well, real
I'd
quick.
love-
Sorry, go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
That's what DeGrath is saying. He says 7 million if you go back farther, but that's what his sentence was. But
Yeah.
I'm not referring to the first life on Earth. No, they say it's billions of years is how far back time goes, not millions. Unless he's referring to the first signs of life on Earth. I don't know.
You should come into the waiting room. We'll bring you on the air.
I don't know if he has. I'll send him a link real quick. Well, actually, it's in the Twitch chat. You can click on it.
Yeah.
But what I'm referring to is whether it's billions or trillions or some other number that we don't know. It doesn't matter how many years ago it was. I have no idea. Just the very first civilization to have existed, regardless of how long ago it was.
Yeah.
And I think that's my theory on that. Well, we're getting a little off topic, but my theory on that is that I think the very first civilization that ever existed was on a giant spaceship.
Oh yeah. Well, no. Where did they come from though? They had to.
They were created
just-
into that.
Oh,
So-
you think they were created into a spaceship from the beginning?
Correct. So it's like imagine God sitting up somewhere and he says, "Boom, this device, this vessels where they're going to live in space, like in the nothingness of space." And he created them into that, and that's where their civilization started. It was like a direct creation at that point.
Oh, okay, I see what
Kinda
you're saying.
like
I don't
it-
know if I can agree with that, but
Well,
I
think
understand
about
what
it. They talk about when it comes to evolution or God creating us, when the debate is, were we created and put on Earth at a certain point, or did we just evolve from that, like amoebas? Like there was some starting point. If we didn't evolve from little bacteria and we were born or created, we were put somewhere.
Well, it depends how you. I mean, if you're looking at God and you
Mhm.
say that God created the universe with the Big Bang,
Hmm.
that's all that he would have had to have done, and everything else has evolved from that into what it is today.
Well, I don't.
He didn't necessarily have to create man
No, and
the
not
way we are in order for it to happen. That could have been done by other beings that came into
well, yeah,
existence.
I'm not
beyond
saying that he created man right then and there. I'm not even saying that race is human. I'm just saying that first. So, what I believe is, let's say God created all the physical universe, right? And he saw all the planets and everything, but he hadn't created light because he didn't create everything. It's like kind of like the Big Bang Theory, where everything came into existence, but he took that physical reality, what's the word I'm looking for? Like the physicalness of everything, correct? You know what I'm trying to say? Like the
Mhm.
physical,
Mhm.
and then he made life inside of that physical realm,
Okay.
and that physical, and that's that that society I was talking about, that they would have been the first ones that he looked around like, there's nothing that is similar to me, so boom, in his image, kind of like the Earth story where of God creating life on Earth, but much 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 earlier than that.
Yeah. Now, my other question for you is, would you use time travel? This is also to the chat. I'm curious what people think. Would you use time travel for financial gain?
That's, like I said, that's not on the top of my priorities. I would much rather go much farther back and experience other things.
Yeah. No,
and
I'm
chat
curious.
says no, I wouldn't.
Yeah, no, why chat? Why wouldn't you? I mean,
Here, I'll let you talk to chat real quick. I'll be right back.
okay. My question about this is that, I mean, I would want to go back to see certain events and certain things and find out, mysteries of the universe and that type of stuff. But I'd also kind of want to hedge my bets into coming back, because if you went, let's say you could go back and invest in Google, or buy eBay at $12, when you come back, that money, you'd have a lot of money and you could do a lot of good with that money. Now, of course, if the time travel that you're experiencing shows you the secrets of the universe, then of course that money might not be necessary. But if you're coming back, I would hedge my bets in order to have that money so that you could do a lot of good with it. So that's what I would want to do. A lot of people, it's interesting, and I ask a lot of people that question. They give, and it seems to be split kind of 50-50. People say no, they wouldn't, but sometimes I wonder if people say no because they don't want to seem materialistic. I'm not saying that that's why you said no or why Jericho said no, but sometimes I feel people give that answer because they don't want to seem like they're a greedy or materialistic person. But I don't necessarily feel that makes you a greedy or materialistic person, because you could go back and, like I said, then come back and do a lot of good with that money. What's the Reaper game says? I'd go back and put money in a decent sum of money in a bank account and let it collect interest.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying I'd be worried about being materialistic or anything. That's not at all what I'm referring to. The reason why I say I wouldn't do it is because I'd much rather go back and learn everything there is. If I had to choose, let's just say I had to choose between money and experience and everything I could and all the knowledge I could learn, I'd much rather take that knowledge and experience and everything and use that for going back to my timeline to do things rather than just...
Well, yeah, I agree. But the thing is that when you come back, this timeline that you're existing in now and the way life is right now, you need money in order to accomplish things. So you could know the secrets of the universe, but would you be able to implement them if you didn't have the money to do so?
Well, yeah, if you can do literally anything because you know the secrets of the universe, yeah.
Well, maybe. I don't know. Like I said, I'd hedge my bet so that money's there.
Oh, yeah, there's no reason why you can't do that. That wouldn't be my primary goal, is all I was saying.
No, I'm not saying it would be my primary goal either, but it would definitely be something I wouldn't not do. Or go to the future and bring back some cool tech to invent and sell.
And then DeGrasse said, because money can be made in present time from hard work, but going back and changing an event can save millions of lives and better the world. Can't be bought. Oh,
that's true, but again,
you're not saying you can't do both, right?
You can do both, but going back and changing events, how do you know what the effect of those
I wouldn't want to
changes
change
are going
anything.
to be? As I said before, if you went back and thought, okay, I'm going to kill baby Hitler and replace him, how do you know that the baby you replace him with isn't who turns out to be Hitler?
It's what they call the butterfly effect too, because who knows, maybe you negating the Holocaust causes something much worse.
Well, the other thing is that if you kill Hitler, okay, maybe the Germans don't lose World War II, because one of the reasons they lost World War II was because of the poor decisions that Hitler made. So if Hitler dies and the Germans, World War II, that doesn't mean World War II won't happen. Maybe the Germans end up winning World War II. And Hitler wasn't the only one who was responsible for the Holocaust.
Yeah.
You know, it was all the leadership of the Third Reich. So killing Hitler could have very, very bad consequences.
Or good consequences. We don't know. It's all hypothetical.
You don't know. That's the problem. We don't know. But the thing is that that's the problem with messing with the past. You don't know what sort of consequences it would have on your future timeline. Now the timeline, you know, leaving this timeline, going back, doing that, it changes for you. It doesn't change the timeline that you left. The people that are still here.
Well, maybe if
we
don't know, like once again, we don't know if it actually works that way or not.
Well, that solves the paradox of the grandfather.
Correct.
The multi-universe theory, which there is a lot of evidence to show that exists.
I think there are other universes. I'm not entirely. I don't think that our universes necessarily very often directly interact with one another or to change each other's own. I feel like each universe has its own set of points that it hits, and it's going to hit regardless of what you do.
Mm-hmm. Now I get another question for you. If you could travel back in time and meet one person, who would you want to meet?
Okay, how about for these questions I refer to time travel in the Earth sense? That way it's not so convoluted.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's what I mean. I mean,
okay, that's why I said
our
go back
timeline. Yeah, within our timeline.
From the beginning of when we were living on Earth, if that's whether we were living somewhere before Earth or on Earth, regardless, on Earth, when would I go back?
Yeah.
Okay.
You meet only one person, who would it be?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
I know who I want to go back and talk to.
If I had to pick someone within recent time, I'd probably go talk to Tesla.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'd pick Albert Einstein or Nikola Tesla.
Yeah, I would definitely pick Tesla because that man was onto a lot of stuff that there's a whole conspiracy of all the stuff that Tesla did that they did away with and they don't want people to know about. Can you imagine going back and getting that knowledge, taking it into the future, making it now? Boom, ching, ching. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, a lot of that supposedly tech is coming out because of
Leonidas
things that he had. So
DeGroth says Leonidas. That's a pretty good person. The commander of the Spartans. That's a pretty good one. That's a really good one, actually.
I like that. Hannibal. That if it was going to be a military person, yeah, definitely.
Huh.
That'd be interesting. That'd be interesting to talk to for sure. Well, we're at the top of the hour, so we're going to take a break here for like 2-3 minutes.
All right.
And we'll be right back.
All right. We're back. Thank you for bearing with us during our piss break.
That's TMI.
Oh, my bad. I thought we were divulging information with our podcast. I'm just messing. But where were we? We left off.
We were just talking about who would we meet.
Oh, I have one for the chat. Let's. If you didn't have a significant other, you don't have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, who would you go back and date and why?
Oh, that's an interesting one.
Mm-hmm.
I have to think about that. Who would I want to go back? I don't know.
That's a good one, huh?
I mean, within like recent time, close.
Anytime you want.
Like yeah. I mean, if I was picking the 20th century, I don't know. Maybe Marilyn Monroe, because it'd be interesting to see. If you go back further than that, I don't know. I'd really have to think about it. Maybe, I don't know. That one I'd have to think about. That's a tough one for me to honestly come up with an answer for.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, all right. Well, moving forward here. So I have another thing here. This is a conspiracy. This one's been making the rounds now fairly recently. and it has to do with Donald Trump having a time machine. Now, there's two aspects to this story, which tie the whole thing together. And it starts out about these obscure children's books that were written during the late 1800s by a man named Ingersoll Lockwood. And he wrote 3 different books, 2 children books, and one of them was like a short story political pamphlet. And the people that hear to this theory say that he was predicting the future and also had met.
Who was this predicting the future again?
What was that?
Who was the person in question that was predicting?
Ingersoll Lockwood was his name. He's a writer and a lawyer from the 1800s.
Oh, okay.
So these books that he wrote predict the future, supposedly, of our time that's taking place right now. And part of the theory is that it proves that the Trump family has a time machine. And the reason it proves Trump family has a time machine is because he knew this and he wrote it down within these books. And one of the books that he wrote was called The Travels and Adventures of Little Baron Trump. That was the name of the one book. This was written in the late 1800s.
Wow.
And these are books. These books are real. This is not made up bullshit or anything like that. This is true. The other book was called Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Adventure. And then the last one that he wrote, which was the short story political pamphlet, was from 1896, and it was called The Last President.
Baron Trump.
And what that no, it's just called The Last President. And that story talks about a president who is from this time period, who is elected president, and he's very, just like Donald Trump, very controversial candidate who wins. And the day after he wins, there's huge protests and riots that take place in Washington, D.C., in New York. This is according to this pamphlet. And these are the same things that took place when Donald Trump became president, right? The next day, there was a huge you had the women with the pink hats, and you had the protesters in New York. And in the book, it says that the protests go to, I forget the hotel, on Fifth Avenue. Well, in New York, when these protests happened for Donald Trump, they ended right near Fifth Avenue, near supposedly the hotel, this hotel that exists. Now, Baron Trump, according to the story, the Traveling Adventures of Little Baron Trump, Baron is a child who lives in Trump Castle. Okay, he's very rich, and he lives in Trump Castle, Trump Tower, Trump Castle. These are the correlations that people are putting together with this. And this is where it really gets funny. He starts his adventure, but he's bored with his life because he has money, and so he's bored. So he decides that he's going to go on this adventure, and he's looking for a time portal, and he starts his adventure in all places, Russia. Okay, this is in this book. And he meets a man there. Now, I'm not going to say this guy, the name of the man in the book. It's like 5 different names put, and it's long. It's Spanish. I can't pronounce it, but it's Don blank 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 blank. This guy's name. So everyone correlates this guy Don as being Donald Trump. Now, Don for Spain is a surname. But because it's the name that they give him in the book, that he gives him in the book, isn't really used except for like 1 or 2 times. The rest of the time they use the word Don, and Don is the one who guides Baron through time, I guess. and helps him achieve his time travel. Okay, so everyone's saying, well, these books predicted it, and this is part of why the Baron Trump is traveling through time at his father's guidance in order to shape things for the Trump family and for Donald Trump. Now, what makes the second part of this story interesting, it involves Nikola Tesla and the Trump family. When Nikola Tesla died in New York, the government came in and confiscated all
FBI,
of
right?
his it was actually the Department for Alien Affairs, because it was
Real quick,
because
someone
yeah,
in the
go
chat. Unreal Cade, Mr. Marcus, I actually was about to, I was going to bring this up after we got done with this topic.
what about the Simpsons and
Their ability to predict everything that
predict
happens.
everything-
I was going to bring
everything
that up too, yeah.
Well, you have to bring, because I'm not familiar with that at all. I'm not
Okay.
familiar with that.
Yeah,
So-
I'll talk about it when we get to it.
Okay, so Nikola Tesla dies, and the government comes in and they confiscate all of Nikola Tesla's works in his laboratory. Everything that they can get their hands on, all his papers, they confiscate it all and classify it and say, no one can see this. So the government decides, though, they need someone to go through this paperwork, okay, to look at it and decide, what technology could be used against the U.S., as a weapon that they don't want to declassify, and other information that would be okay to declassify. So the gentleman that they pick to do this work, to overlook these papers, is John G. Trump, Donald Trump's uncle. Okay, this is fact.
For real?
This happened.
Wow.
Yes. And he was engineer, I believe. I don't know if he was a physicist, but he was a scientist, and he worked at MIT. And so he's the one that gets all the papers to go through and see if there's
Wow.
anything in here. So now, when supposedly the conspiracy is that when he went through the papers, he found Nikola Tesla's design
For
for
time
a time
travel.
machine, and decided that he would use the information to build a time machine to help further his work. Okay. And that when he died, when John J. Trump passed away, Donald Trump inherited all of his uncle's papers. He got his uncle's papers, and in there was the information on the time machine, and supposedly that he actually got the time machine. And the Trump family has had a time machine, and that they actually went back in time, that Baron Trump has been sent back in time, and he actually met with Ingersoll Lockwood and told him that he was a time traveler and told him about his adventures, and that's why he wrote those books. So supposedly the Trump family has a time machine.
That would be a cool
It's
thing
an
to be true.
interesting freaking story. And the thing is, if you look at the illustrations of the boy in the book and you compare it to Baron Trump's
It's
face,
an awful lot like
it
it.
looks like him. It looks like him.
That's really cool
So,
theory, yeah.
I mean, if anybody would have a time machine, it wouldn't surprise me if it was Donald Trump. And I honestly, if anybody's gonna have a time machine, I'd like it to be our president of the United States. I'd rather it be the U.S. Regardless of how you feel about Donald Trump.
I'd rather
I
it
want
be a
the
U.S. president than some other
Yeah.
president from another country.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Exactly. I want us to control that technology, because I think it's a very dangerous technology to be out there. But yeah, so this has been hitting the old internet for I don't know, maybe a year or so, and it started out. Was it on 4chan? Somebody posted a thing about Donald Trump having a time machine, and this was before the books came out. And then the books came out, and
If they said those books were the 1800s.
yeah, but before the books got known now, they've been in obscurity before.
Gotcha.
for
Now they're widely
realize
known
when,
compared to
these
before.
books-
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So when they came into
And,
common knowledge.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And what's interesting, there's you go on YouTube and look up John J. Trump, you can see an interview with him where he's talking about going through the papers and what he was doing and stuff. But yeah, that John J. Trump was a real person, and he got a hold of Nikola Tesla's papers and supposedly the information for the time machine. And what proves it is that these books that talk about Donald Trump, becoming president, in the story The Last President, and how it follows Donald Trump's presidency and all the things that are taking place. And it says in the book that it would be it's socialists and anarchists who are protesting the president.
Yep. It's interesting that you say all of this. Is I'm not going to go into it, but some of the stuff that I believe that's going to happen here in the future at some point would line up with the President Trump being reelected and being the last president. That's interesting.
Yeah. Now, I don't know the whole I don't know the entire story.
It doesn't mean the world's ending. It's just something
yeah.
could change, and we don't need presidents, or like something happens where I don't know. I don't want to get into it. That's for a different night. But that lines up a lot with some of my beliefs about what's going to happen here in the future.
But when I came across this one, I was like, wait, what? And when I saw that when I first came across this, like Donald Trump has a time machine, I'm like, oh God, really? People will come up with the most crazy things.
But that's pretty legit. That's a pretty legit theory. That's pretty cool.
It is a pretty legit theory. I mean, it all ties together when you find out his uncle got a hold of Nikola Tesla's papers as the one was looking through them and stuff. I mean, can you imagine what was in those papers?
Well,
I mean,
if that's
it's just amazing.
Could you imagine too if let's say they got the time travel stuff right, and they're using it? Who knows? They could be using it. It's like, who knows? This could be the worst possible thing for all we know. I don't think it is. I don't think we're on the worst possible track. But it seems like to me, when you're talking about this stuff and what the president's doing and saying, this is all based on the theory of time traveling for the president being true.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the case, I already think he's aware of a lot of stuff that's going on. Like the government is always aware of a lot of things that we don't know about as in the general public.
Yeah.
What if they did that and found out what was going to happen in the future and went back and set everything up so we could be able to survive what's coming in the future? Or they set us up to be in the best possible situation for what's coming.
Yeah. I mean, it would also, it could explain things like why every time something is coming up about, like, why there's no things about, like they're always trying to get Donald Trump on something, but they never can find it.
I didn't even think about that.
Because the story comes out, Trump was involved in blah, blah, blah. Well, they send old Barron back in time to get rid of all that evidence, and it doesn't exist anymore.
That would be great. That's funny.
It's so weird, the possibilities is just crazy. And there's interviews with Trump from the past before he became president where
he said he would do it if he had
things
to.
Like, if he, and he's like, and he talks about, about his uncle in one interview and how he comes from this, he's a genius because his uncle was a genius. And
I don't
also
doubt that
he would do whatever he had to do in order to help the country, he says in one thing and stuff.
Yeah.
So regardless of how you feel about Donald Trump, we're not getting into that aspect of his presidency and that type of thing. It's just
for the point of time travel and theory.
Yeah. But that could be why they can't pin anything on him.
That's interesting. That would, meta.
Because there's a story every other freaking day about how Donald Trump was involved with a blah 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 and this, and then it's like, there's no evidence to back this up. We can't find any evidence.
That would be so funny.
Because they're erasing it from freaking time, maybe.
I didn't even think about that. That's great. So for all of our, I consider myself a game nerd. So for all of my fellow game nerds out there, I'm going to make a reference for you. Trump's got some master tier level off table meta game. Oh man.
Okay, so
It's so great.
What's the thing with The Simpsons? I'm not familiar with
Okay,
that.
so with The Simpsons, they talk about how The Simpsons throughout time has predicted what's going to happen. So there's this one episode of The Simpsons like a long time ago where The Simpsons showed Donald Trump coming down Donald Trump Tower, down his stairs or his escalator or whatever, and he was elected president. And that same exact scene on camera, in almost that same exact way, happened in real life many years later, and almost perfect detail to what they had made it on The Simpsons. Almost exactly.
Is there
the
a
same
bunch
way.
of?
There's several different
like that?
things in which, yes, The Simpsons has predicted several things.
Okay, now do you think that they are just coincidence predicting, or that they have access to information that they're predicting, or that it's like the whole thing with like the Illuminati,
Well,
that someone who's involved in the secret organizations
puts it
that
through
run
The
the
Simpsons
government
because there's
is
a lot
putting the information out in a way that to
Don't
warn
get in
people
trouble, yeah.
or to tell people what's going on without getting in trouble. Similar to the concept
Yeah.
of what Seth MacFarlane does through Family Guy by saying, when Stewie's running through the mall naked, saying, "Help, help! I escaped from Kevin Spacey's basement."
Yeah, but that was after the fact, wasn't it?
No,
That was
no,
beforehand?
before the fact. Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes, a lot of those incidents take place within Family Guy like that.
Maybe that's their way
So-
of helping, like getting things out there. But
Yeah.
I think that The Simpsons they put that up there, but I think President Trump had already talked about in the past about people asked him to be president, and they already talked about it, so The Simpsons could have taken it off of that, knowing that if he did become president, he would be doing that in Trump Tower, which is a pretty fair assumption.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
So there's a lot. I mean, there's lots of possibilities of how that came
So-
into.
you know what? I now understand the Japanese people back when President Trump got elected calling him the God Emperor Trump because he's a time traveler. People, sorry, it's such a great theory.
I know, right? If he has a time machine, I know. Now, with one of the other things that came up, I don't know. I don't believe this part at all, but I saw some stuff within forums, people talking about that because Donald Trump knows the Clintons. Okay, as they were kind of, I don't know if they were necessarily friendlies,
But they knew each other.
They know each other. Yeah, supposedly that's what happened to. That's what went wrong with Hillary Clinton. Is that she used the time machine, and that's what caused her to have the problems that she was having. Where like she had in the one interview, she kind of has like a convulsions in front of the reporters, and then the other thing where like she was falling over. When they were putting her in the van, and because she used the time machine and
Try to change
somehow
things.
physically she got damaged and it screwed her up. That's a
So
theory.
the theory is she's trying to use it to take the election away from President
Well,
Trump.
we don't know what she was using it for. She could have just traveled back in time for any reason, and it just caused her to get screwed up in some way. I mean, maybe the time machine causes different physical abnormalities to different people.
Or
Because if you look at Barron Trump, he's freakishly tall for his age. The kid is 12.
maybe he spent like several years in the past. Maybe that's why he's so much taller.
And he well, yeah, that's true. And he grew, and then he comes back to the field. Now he's this because I mean, well, he was 12. So now he'd be 14, I guess, or whatever.
I don't
But
know.
the thing is that for his age, he's as tall as his freaking dad. That kid is freakishly.
To be
tall
fair
for
though,
his
I was
age.
really tall for my age always too. I was like
Yeah,
I was like
but-
15 and 6 foot tall. So
But maybe it's well, we'll kind of think maybe you might be a time traveler too. So, but maybe the time machine can affect people in different ways, or maybe it's because Barron Trump's, like you said, he spent all this time in the past and he grew. So now when he comes forward, he's tall. He's he grew while he was away. Who knows? You
Huh.
know.
it's all definitely interesting. It puts a new it gives me a lot to think about, which is really nice. That's a really
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
whole idea. It's interesting.
I thought it was going to be one of the more just ridiculous conspiracy theories that
Yeah.
people were throwing out there, and then I'm like, wait a minute.
There's some
What?
basis to all this. No, but
Yeah.
it was confirmed at some point that the military actually approached President Trump about becoming president. Did you know
Oh,
that?
really?
Yeah,
No,
I
I
used to.
didn't know
There's a
that.
lot of stuff I used to watch. I don't know how. Okay, it depends. People always. One person could be 100% factual and been correct on everything they ever said, but another group of people says, "Oh, well, that person has no credibility," and you'll never know.
Mm-hmm.
But there was this. He was a doctor something, Corsi, I think. He's 12 and he's 6'1".
Yeah.
Wow.
Exactly. That's
That's
freaky.
crazy.
That's just freaky.
Maybe he's like 17. No.
Yeah, he's actually 17 years old because he spent all these years in the past.
No. But what is it called? What was I talking about again? Like I lost track. I got distracted.
You said you were talking about the government or
Oh,
military.
Doctor.
pushing
I think his
Donald
name was
Trump
Dr. Corsi. Was saying that back when at one point supposedly the military had considered going and overthrowing the presidency of Obama, and that the reason why they were doing the theory behind that and the reason why they were doing that, supposedly why they were considering it, was because he was doing all this stuff. I'm not trying to get into politics, I'm just trying to talk about the theory, so bear with me. The theory was that these different, this is all leading back to President Trump, and we'll get to it, but the theory was that ex-president Obama was doing all this stuff that wasn't good for our country or something. A lot of stuff we don't know about. Like, I don't know, like, I've never heard anything about it in the news, so I don't even know what it would be or what reason they would be. And then at one point they were saying that Obama wanted to declare a martial law right before the next presidency came into effect.
Mm-hmm.
And if I remember, I'll have to go look for it myself, but I saw somewhere that he himself had confirmed that that is something he did think about doing.
Oh, okay.
And the military at some point ended up deciding, you know what, no, we're not gonna unconstitutionally overthrow the president. What we're gonna do is we're going to approach Donald Trump and ask him to run for president, and we're gonna back him.
Oh, okay. Well, it's interesting that you just made me think of something when you brought up Obama.
Okay.
And this has to do with Trump and his time machine. Trump was one of the big advocates of the birth certificate controversy with Obama.
Yeah, I know.
Maybe he had traveled back in time and knew that it was true, possibly. And
well, that's something the government could easily know too, though.
yeah, but I'm just saying it would,
Yeah.
he has a time machine.
I'll go
He
find
could
out
have
for
known
myself.
that it was true, and maybe that's why he was one of the big advocates of that whole conspiracy and that theory, because he really pushed that for a while. So who knows?
And
Other thing?
that reminds me. I know we're getting off topic, but was interesting that we should have talked about this last episode. But it was interesting is that there were some of the top most renowned fraud experts in the world when it came to documentation. There was many of them looked at the birth certificate that was represented by Obama, that was presented by people that then they said it was Obama's, and they went through and looked, and they said, we're not saying that he's not a U.S. citizen. What we are saying is that the birth certificate that we were presented with is a fake.
Yeah, I heard that too.
I watched the experts talking about it, and they went through and they showed whoever did it, there were several points and several letters that were copied and pasted over again, because it was written the exact same way. And they said in the way when they look into it, the human handwriting, however they do it, I'm not an expert on this stuff, so I don't know exactly how it works, but they said whatever happened was some of the things lined up exactly the way they would have. It was perfect, and they said humans don't duplicate the same exact thing perfectly over and over again. And it was like 3 or 4 instances of something on that document being perfect in recreation of something else that was already on there, so it could have been it was like it was copied and pasted. They said it's impossible for people to duplicate something so perfectly.
Yeah. I had heard that.
Yeah.
I didn't know a lot about it, but I had heard.
Yeah, I had
No,
watched
but-
a whole bunch of people talk about it. What?
Yeah. No. I was gonna say we should get back on.
Yeah, let's get back on topic. But
so, anyways, that was my thing that I wanted to bring up. My conspiracy that had to do with time travel.
all right, well,
So what? We'll move on to you. And
So-
whatever-
it's more of a concept rather than an exact topic. Is you know how they say time is separate and everything?
Mhm.
What if time doesn't exist at all and it's just our perspective that we call it time? And what we're doing is we're just traveling through a different state. We're not actually going forward or back in time. We're just traveling to a different state of the universe or whatever at that point. It's like, because the theory is that time itself is a man-made construct, and that
Yes.
outside of humanity, time doesn't actually exist apart from our perception of reality.
Yes,
I've heard
that's
that
what I
before.
was saying before. But well, yeah, that's what I was saying before about in this physical form. That's why we need a time machine, because of the physical form that we're stuck in right now. We can't travel through time without some sort of help.
Oh, well, that's the thing too. That's not exactly what I'm saying. Is according to that theory that people were saying is that time itself doesn't exist at all. It's just a name we've given something to explain.
Well,
something.
yeah, we've named it in order to explain it. Yes, in order to have a concept of what we're talking about, we've given it a name, and we're calling
Yeah.
it time. But space time that exists together, space and time are one and the same.
Well, according to theory.
According to theory, yes. Einstein and others who have looked at like Stephen Hawking, that type of thing and stuff. Yeah, I mean,
It's like it could just
definitely if you take away the construct that man has put time into, then yes, of course, I kind of believe that once you're out of this physical form, you can definitely. There is no, I think, boundaries of time.
Well, what I'm saying too is even in this physical form, time doesn't exist. It's just something that we've created, kind of like. I know I'm not going to say gravity doesn't exist. I'm not saying that. I'm going to use gravity as an example. So let's pretend that gravity didn't exist and it was buoyancy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like heavier sinks, lighter floats, or whatever. Let's just pretend like it's that, but we call it gravity, not knowing what it actually is.
Yeah, well, we've
It is-
given it a name in order to.
Yeah,
You
but
have to give it a name in order.
now
to
if
discuss it,
time
or to
doesn't
have it.
exist at
Yeah.
all, though, we're making something up entirely. Is what that theory is about. Is that time
Mm-hmm.
itself doesn't exist in any way, shape, or form. That we just have a word and a concept that doesn't actually exist in any way, shape, or form, physical or non-physical.
Now, do you believe that you could see? Because I do believe this, that you can travel through time with the use just with your mind.
Oh yeah. If
The-
time
the
exists,
power of
I'm not saying time doesn't exist. That was just a theory. I
Well,
had
I'm
heard.
talking time. I'm talking time as in
I know what you mean.
the concept of everything.
I only bring
Well,
it up to
All
separate.
universe, all what do you call it? It's
Well, I only bring that up to separate what I
All
was just
dimensions.
saying. I'm saying I'm getting off of the page of that and then talking to you about this because
hmm
just so now this conversation disregarding everything we just talked about beforehand a second ago. Can we travel through time as we understand it with nothing but your mind? I believe so.
Yes, I absolutely believe that you can do that. I've always thought that. That's one of the reasons why I like that movie, Somewhere in Time, because that's the basis of that movie. That he travels back in time with the use of his mind.
Well, it's interesting too.
And-
Good.
No. Go ahead.
It's interesting too is that somebody on Reddit had asked about, and I frequent Reddit and different topics, and in one of the topics somebody asked about time travel and if they think it's real and all that, or if you can do it with your mind and stuff like that. And I'll give you 2 examples of spiritual things that happened with me when I was trying to think about what someone was talking about. Is my brother little brother had told my mom that he had seen something. He couldn't sleep because there was two guys sitting in a tree looking down at him through his window, and they had a white mask and black cloaks, is what he told my mom. So me trying to see if this was something that actually happened or not through spiritual means, I was looking. It's like I was trying to imagine it in my mind, right? I was trying to see this in my mind, this event, like what he's talking about. And it was weird. So I had it pictured in my mind. I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe those things were real. And then after that moment, both those things, and it's like, you could just say it was my mind, or you could say it was a spiritual thing, just however your belief system is on all that stuff. However, the reason I bring this up is because both of those things looked up at me as if they were aware of me, and that freaked me out. I'm like, wait a second. What? Like, why would they look at me? It makes no sense. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm viewing, let's pretend I was viewing something that had happened previously, and I was watching it as if it was a pre-recorded thing. At least that was my thought of it. I thought, okay, well, if you could view things in the past that happened, it would be like what, like a video, right? Like a pre-recorded chunk of something, like watching a YouTube video or something that happened previously. That was my thought about it. But then both of those things turned and looked straight up at me in my exact position. And they looked at each other and looked back at my brother, and it's like they're like, "Who? What is that?" So it freaked me out, and I'm like, "Wait a second, I don't understand." You know what I mean? Like it made me question a lot of things, because I'm like, "Wait, how is that possible?" You know what I mean? So then we talk. I talked about it with you. I think what you just said, that movie about time traveling with your mind, is that's what makes me think that that's possible, is because I saw those things and they looked at me. And then one other time my other brother was telling me about something, and I was thinking about it, and I started describing it to him, how it happened and what they look like, and he said, holy crap, he like crapped himself. He's like, how the heck did you know that? I was like, I don't know, I just did, I guess. So I think that's possible.
So do you think you were traveling back to the time of when your brother incident took place?
That's the thing.
Or
good.
Or what do you think was happening there?
Well, that's the thing. I didn't think so at first when I first was viewing things like that. I didn't think so. But now I'm not sure, because there was no logical reason to me why something would be looking at me from the point and the perspective in which I was viewing it, if it was in the past. But it did, so now I'm not sure. Like, maybe, you know what I'm saying? I don't know. Because why would something, a previous event that had happened, why would something in that previous event turn and look at me? Like, how would they be aware of me if I was just viewing something that already happened?
Well, if you were only viewing what happened, but
why
if
would
you
they
actually traveled to the event,
well, that's what
in
I'm
time,
saying.
then you would be there.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I thought I was just viewing it, but why, if I was just viewing it, how would they know I was there? Is my point.
Yeah,
so,
they wouldn't. So you were there then.
That's
So then
what
you
I'm
most likely traveled in time, and you were there.
That's what I'm thinking. But you could just say it was my mind that did it, but I don't believe that's the case, because I could go on for days describing to you all the stuff I believe, but nonetheless, it freaked me out. It was the first time I experienced anything like that, because I had tried viewing things that had happened previously when people were talking about them. Never happened that time when I did it. They were aware of me, so I was like, okay, what's going on here? So yes, it's a possibility that I did in those times, and in the way in which it happens in that movie, if it's real. If that happens, then
Yeah.
I believe that that's a possibility. It just...
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. Were we talking about that before the podcast, or about the
Not
movie?
today, but we talked about it before.
Yeah.
'Cause
Just for anyone, because for those that don't know, the movie, what happens is he uses his mind to travel back in time.
In this podcast, we did talk about that, yes.
Yeah, okay, yeah, by separating everything out from the current time period and imagining that he's in that time period and then travels back.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that, like, astral projection is also a form of time travel, or can be used as
I think
a form
it could
of
be
time
used
travel?
as time travel, yes.
And that you could travel back
Correct.
using it?
Correct, because I don't think that is bound by any time. That's not bound by a physical existence in the way in which our bodies are.
Yeah, yeah. Well, exactly. Yeah, I agree with that because once you're outside of the physical limitations of our body and you're just your energy form,
So
I don't think you have any limitations on where you can go or what you can do.
yeah. Well, here's a good example of here's a way I can describe it using some scientific stuff. Is you know how they say things are light years away and it takes the light years to get here? We're
Hmm.
seeing that light right now, physical, even though that star may have stopped existing 10 years ago, 100 years ago.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
still seeing that star as if it exists at this moment, even though it's no longer there.
Hmm.
So that's
Yeah, we're looking
something
into the past. We're looking
looking
into
into
the
the
past.
past, quite literally.
Yeah,
If that's the way, like light works and all that stuff, then yes, we're looking into the past, which is interesting.
yeah. I mean, whether we do that every day with our own sun, because the time that it takes from for the sun to reach the light from our sun to reach us, I forget exactly how long it is, but we're seeing light that already happened. Like, I don't remember if it's days or hours or what it is. I'm
So
completely blanking on that. But we're seeing light that started before, hours before it reaches us or days before or whatever it is had already happened. So the light we're seeing, is
supposedly
late
it's
is
only
in the
minutes.
past, from the past. Yeah, I don't remember.
It's a couple minutes if I remember correctly. The light of the sun to get to us is only a couple minutes. It's like 3 minutes or
Don't
something like
remember
that.
what it is, but but what we're seeing is basically light that existed in the past. It's getting here when it does.
So basically, if the sun were to explode, it might take us a couple minutes before we actually see it explode.
Exactly.
That's not a very comforting thought.
Well, if it explodes, I don't think it's really gonna matter.
We'll have a couple minutes
At
and
that
then
point.
GG.
Yeah, exactly. So, what else? What are your other thoughts?
I really don't have a lot else for us to get into. We're
Okay, well, my last thing that I have here to talk about now is this is like the real science of time travel.
okay.
Regardless of everything else that we talked about tonight and what we may have said, this now starts getting into the actual real science of time travel. And there's a doctor, his name is Ronald L. Mallet, and he has come up with a theory. He's a theoretical physicist, and he is, I believe he works at the University of Connecticut. And he has come up with a theory for traveling into the past to make a time machine that would take you into the past. Now, that's a big deal because no one has thought of a way to do that before. We know we can travel into the future. Einstein's theory of relativity and his special or the special theory of relativity
I've seen the laser
and
machines
his
that
general
technically do that.
theory, yeah, and his general theory of relativity both show that we can travel into the future. There was a test done in 1971 that proved the special theory of relativity, where they took two atomic clocks. One clock they left at the Naval Station Academy on Earth, stationary, and the other one they put into an airplane and flew it around the world at the speed, almost at the speed. At the
Sound.
speed of sound. Thank you. Yes. And when they brought both clocks back together, the one that had been flying in the airplane was a few like fractions of a second slower, which proves the theory that when
By
you
flying?
get closer, the closer you get to the speed of light, which the speed of sound is way slower than that.
I
but
see what you're
as you
saying.
get slower
Yeah.
to the speed, and that proved that theory. And the other theory, then the general theory of relativity, what happened is that if you have a clock on, and now when you say clock, that doesn't just mean a mechanical clock. That also includes a person, which is their internal clock their heartbeat, their organs, everything. And so they also slow down. So the people that were on that airplane also slowed down within time. And then the other theory is the general theory of relativity, that an object where gravity affects time. So that if
Like
so
the closer you
that
get to a
clock
black
on Earth-
hole, the slower time goes.
Yes. So a clock on Earth, okay, is slower than a clock in outer space. And the reason what happened is that when they put GPS satellites up, it wasn't working, and they were like, "Why isn't this working? Why is the time we're getting different?" Well, when they talked to the physicists, they hadn't calculated for the time difference of the satellite in space being further away from the gravitational pull of the Earth. So the satellite was actually running, the clock in the satellite was running slower than the clock on Earth. So again, that was one of the theories. So that's the whole thing, that if you send, if you have, they always say twins, it doesn't have to be twins, but if you have two people on Earth, you send one into outer space at the speed of light, and he travels 4 years and then or travels 2 years and then turns around and comes back at the speed of light, traveling back to Earth. When he gets back, he has only traveled 4 years, but because time slows down for him more in space, traveling at the speed of light, there would have been like 500 years would have passed here on Earth. So
Yeah, we don't know if that's the direct math, but basically that's how it works,
that's how it works.
What's
So
that movie? What's that movie? It's got the guy from Sweet Home Alabama. Space travel movie.
I don't know.
Oh, what's his name? My mom would slap me for not knowing his name. No, I'm just kidding. She wouldn't actually slap me, but what is his name? He plays in a lot of movies. He plays in Fool's Gold. He just played a bad guy in a movie recently, like The Tower or something like that. Dark Tower.
I'm not sure.
I'm gonna look this up real quick because it's gonna bother me if I don't, because I need to know.
So
this.
to continue on, as you're looking that up, so then you have Stephen Hawking, who proved black holes exist, and what they found when they started then looking at black holes, once they realized that they were real, when you get into the event horizon of the black hole, they noticed that
Never mind, wrong guy, wrong movie.
things start slowing down. Time starts slowing because light is traveling at speed. Light starts slowing down, and that they noticed that it's spinning within the black hole. They didn't know this at first, that the light is spinning around, and what happens is what they call screen tearing. That's what they call it, and it's the twisting of time and space. So space fabric, what they call the
Interstellar,
space fabric,
Matthew
is,
McConaughey.
is twisting. Yes, okay, I know.
They talk about this exact topic a lot in that movie. It happens. Like that whole movie is based around the changing of time and everything.
Yeah, because at the end he is in thing where he sees all aspects of his time or whatever.
Yep.
At the end of that movie, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So they realize that time is being dragged. They're calling it frame dragging, and that within the black hole, that it's being twisted. That time is being twisted around. Okay, and that it's moving in a circle and it's being twisted. Now, what this means is that because it's being twisted in a circle, that if you could create that artificially, you could then travel from the present to the past to the future and then back to the past, because you'd be going in a circle because you're twisting time around. So
The infinity loop.
yes. So what Dr. Mallet theory, what he came up with is that he realized that in his theory that if gravity can affect time and light can be affected by gravity, then you can use light to affect time. Mm-hmm. So what he came up with was, and he did all the math and everything, and this took, this was over years and years and years. He did the math, and what he came up with is that if you were to create light in a loop, and he built a model of his time machine.
Yeah, I've seen these
to show-
videos. This is what you
Yeah. And if you can create a loop of time, then you could do this. And this is huge groundbreaking work. And they looked at his theory. Now, some people have problems with his theory. They're like, it won't be able to be done, or you can't create the power to do it and all this. But what he wants to do is he's a theoretical physicist, so he does the math. He doesn't do the experiments. So, but he is working with another gentleman who they wanted to work together to do the experiments. What they're having trouble right now is getting the funding to do the actual physical experiments. But what they want to do is see if they can take a subatomic particle and send it back and send it back in time. And if they can do, it'll only be like fractions of a second. But if they can create the light to go in a loop and cause artificial tearing like you see in a black hole, then you'll be able to travel back in time. That'll be the first steps for us to be able to create a time machine that
if it doesn't exist already
into the past. Yes, if it doesn't already exist. But this is the actual science that's going on right now within the scientific community. And if he can prove this works, this is a huge monumental step into creating a time machine that takes you into the past. Because if you go into the future with the theory of Einstein's theories, you can't come back. You can only go into the future.
You have to go and wait.
There's no way to come back to this time. You're stuck there. But this thing that Dr. Mallet's come up with says that, well, not only can you go into the future, but you can also go into the past, because you're twisting time space together and you're creating a loop, and you'll be able to then travel through time. And his thing is, but here's the thing, you can't travel any further back in time from when you started the machine. So the day the machine starts, you can't travel
to that
back
point
further. But his thing is, what you can use it for is you can't really send a person, because it would be too much energy, and there's a lot of things. You're creating such a gravitational pull like in a black hole that you would tear a person apart. But you could send information. So let's say we go 100 years into the future, you turn the time machine on today, 100 years from now we get the cure for cancer. We could send that information back to this time period.
There it is, a cure for cancer. Remember our last conversation we had on the last podcast?
Yes, you could use it as a early warning system. Like there's a huge catastrophe that takes place, well, you could send information back
try to stop it,
get all those people out of there, or try to stop it. The only problem is, as we discussed earlier, is what sort of effects would that actually have on the future? Because if, let's say, a bunch of people were supposed to die and now you stop it from happening, well, maybe one of those persons that was going to die was a mass murderer, or somebody who was going to do, so it's, yes, you could use it as a warning system, but is it really safe to do so?
I think if it was used as any kind of I think if it was to be used as any kind of warning system, it should be used as the world is going to end, we need to stop it.
Yeah.
Because at that point, I think the world not imploding is a very good thing, regardless of the outcome, to make sure.
Or maybe if there was going to be like a huge nuclear war, where
to stop that from happening.
Millions, and stop that from happening. But I don't know how. Would it be a good idea? There's a hurricane that's going to hit. You want to stop that natural disaster of that hurricane.
It should be meant for super
that could have
grand things.
Yeah. The other thing is that who's going to control this device? If who's going to control it? That's the scary part for me for time travel. Whether there is a time machine that exists now, whether there will be one in the future, who is going to control this technology? Because I hate to say it, but we know that it most likely will not be used for good purposes. we don't know what it'll be used for. It could be a very dangerous thing
Yep.
that could happen. But this is a very interesting theory that he's come up with, and all the math works. So it could very easily happen that and he says that within this century is going to be the century of time travel, that it's going to happen, and that it's going to come out, and that it's going to exist. It's going to be a technology that everyone knows about. We will be traveling through time.
All right. Well,
but we'll see.
If you agree, David, I think that's probably a good place to call it.
Yeah, I think that is a good place to call it. And just to remind everyone that we put all this information on what we talk about in our Discord, in our news feed. So please come join the Discord and see what we're talking about. Also, if you want to contact me or Jericho, you can private message us through Discord. I'm Sentinel. Jericho is Space King. And I appreciate everyone joining us tonight. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get in my time machine and go back to the beginning of this podcast to fix some things that I might have said wrong.
Yep.
But you'll never know that.
And I'll assist David in this, and you'll never know either. Unless you go back and you watch the upload on YouTube. Then you might notice some changes in time.
Yes. You know what? You should do that, because he'll put it up and then I'll go back and change it. And the question is, will there be a difference? Will there be two different podcasts?
All right. Pretty much. All right. Well,
good night, everybody. Have a great evening.
Yep. Have a good night, David. And to everyone, a good night.